Now, this remote has been reviewed to death, so I'm kind of just going to go over it real quick as best I can, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about why I think it's a good option to have if you have been looking at one or considering one. There are lots of videos out there. It's not a brand new product. It's been on the market for maybe 4 or 5 years now, but it's definitely something I recommend with its current price trends of sub $100. If you're using a bunch of remotes, this might be a good solution for you. And one of the reasons that that's the case is because, well, you don't want to use a lot of remotes, and on top of that, the blaster that's built into the IR on the remote itself is far better than a lot of the ones I have for other devices. My namely example would be the Elite Screen, which came with a pretty crappy, small range, little simple remote. While the remote that came with the Elite Spectrum Series screen is nice, this remote definitely expands the range and makes it a lot easier to use when it comes to controlling my screen. On top of that, setting sequences and tasks is something that's really important to me, and I think that it works great. So one of the things about that though is it's not maybe as simple as Logitech wants people to feel that it is. Setting up your sequences and tasks can take some time. I'd set aside a few hours to kind of get things just right. Sometimes I still feel like I just don't have everything just right. I do have one that's for Start the Show. What Start the Show does is it drops my projector screen to the required height that I want it to be dropped to, at the same time as turning on the projector and setting the projector to the correct input for the Fire Stick, while it also turns on my sound system. As simple as it is to say that that's what it does, it took me a lot more time to figure out how to get it to work the way I wanted to. On top of that, the UI can be a little bit complicated sometimes, maybe not as user-friendly and straightforward as I wished it was, because sometimes you want to turn it on and then just turn it off, but then you're stuck with the off screen button instead of start screen button, and you've got to kind of go in there and figure out what little door icon do I hit to get to where I want to be. Now, that might sound a little bit confusing, and it's hard to explain if you've not actually sat down with one, so all I'm trying to say is it's not as intuitive as I wish it was. It's all there and it works great once you get it set up, but sometimes it's a little bit of a pain in the butt just to get where you want to be. Teaching it devices that aren't already known by Harmony was actually really simple. Now, I did it in a very basic way, and my example for this is we got a heater from a cheap little store. It's a Magnavox heater with an IR remote to power it on, turn the heat up, turn the heat down, power it off. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. All we did is hold it up to the back of the remote, hold the buttons, follow the instructions to teach it the codes, and then it simply names them things like volume up and down. And while you can change that to reflect heat up and down, we just left it as volume up and down because it's pretty simple to me. It didn't really bother me that it says I'm turning the volume up on a heater when I'm actually turning the heat up on the heater, but if it bothers you, you can go in and change that. You have the ability to program 15 different devices to the remote itself. Now, they have to be IR devices. If you want to kind of expand outside of that IR device realm, you're looking at getting something like the hub, but it's not a necessary requirement unless it's just something you have to have. Smart home integration is something that makes this thing pretty nice too. So if you wanted to be extra lazy, you're laying on the couch already, you see your remote way over there and you're like, oh, it's so far away, my one remote that controls everything. You can do things like tell Alexa or tell Google to tell Harmony to do whatever sequence or thing you need it to do, and it'll start to do it for you. Most devices are already on the menu selection, so if you've got something that you might not even think should be on there, you might be surprised that most of these are already in the cataloged information inside the Harmony app for the desktop. You can pretty much go in there and type in your model number, find anything you need, and tell it to sync to the remote so the remote learns that device. It's pretty awesome that they have such a large database. At times, the Harmony app can be a little bit frustrating to work with. That's one of my cons with it. Another con would be the price ranges seem to fluctuate massively. I would not pay over $100 for just the remote. In fact, we got this one for 60 bucks, which was pretty awesome because I haven't seen it that low recently, but it sits around $60 to $75 and at worst about 100 bucks depending on where you're looking. It's definitely worth it now that I've had it and had time to use it and been using it for a while. I would say that this remote just makes life so much easier, and it's definitely worth it. Of course, there's newer iterations of it that are out there that cost substantially more, but this one does everything I need it to do, and I'm very happy with it. Something that's neat that I don't use, but it's worth mentioning if you do use, the touchscreen can actually be used as a gesture control screen as well. So if you're somebody that wants to turn the volume up and down using gesture control on the touchscreen, you can go up and down and do volume with that. It's pretty simple. You can also macro the tactile buttons on the remote as well as use touchscreen buttons to do any of your sequences or your ups and downs, your starts, your plays, your pauses. You can use either the touchscreen or the buttons. Pretty neat. So based on my experience, a lot of it's going to be trial and error. You're definitely going to want to set some time aside in order to set up your sequences or your devices to make sure they're working right. I did spend a lot of time going back and forth with it, trying to figure out just to set up a sequence as accurately as I could It just took a little bit of time to do. It wasn't as straightforward and as simple as plugging it in and telling it, this is what I want you to do. I expect you to do it. It took a little bit of playing with it just to get it where I wanted it to go. Now, one of my things was too, is I'm using a screen and I'm using timings and I'm using different sequences. So it was a little bit more work on my part to try to get it where I wanted it, but I was very happy to find out that I could do or achieve everything that I wanted to achieve just with a little bit of work put into it. A downside to just the remote especially is it's IR devices only. So if you're looking at things like Fire Sticks or Roku, you're going to encounter issues with that as they're not compatible and not IR devices. I suppose if it's the Roku Express, which is an IR device, that will work for you. But if you're trying to do something like on the Fire Stick, which is a Bluetooth device, radio frequency device, you're looking at something that's not going to work out that great for you without additions, things like the hub. And even then, it's still not a simple setup. I do have a hub. We're not going over that in this video. I really just wanted to touch on the remote because I think it's a good find for anybody that's looking to control multiple devices, set up sequences, and just eliminate the clutter of remote. That's really all I have to say about it. I'm sorry if it wasn't as in-depth as maybe somebody was hoping it would be, but there are a lot of videos out there, and I didn't want to keep recapping on things other people have already reported on. I definitely recommend going and checking out other reviews if you want to see some other stuff about it. This is really just my 2 cents after using it for a while now and sharing my thoughts of what I think, especially with its current price trends. I definitely think it's worth it, and if it's something that you've been on the fence about, like, do I really need that? No, you don't need this. It's not something anybody really needs, but it's something that's pretty cool. Probably one of my favorite toys in the theater room. Anyways, guys, have a great day, night, whatever it is. I'll see you in the next video that I do.